Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a couple of times before. This is going to be review number 3 from these guys if I remember correctly, and I was impressed with the last 2 beers that I had from them. The last review came back in July of 2020 and I saw this one being released and I thought, well, why not? Let's have a go at it. So for this review then we are going to head up to Jämtland County, which is quite a bit further north than I am, maybe about 2/3 of the way up Sweden if I'm remembering correctly, and we are going to go to Åre, which is of course famous for its ski slopes, quite close to the Norwegian border. So for this review then we are going to return to Åre Bryggcompagni for the 3rd time, and today we're having a taste of the After the Gold Rush. So this particular beer comes in at 8% ABV. They're describing it as a double IPA, although from what I gather this one uses a kvike yeast, so maybe it's more accurate to call it a double kvike IPA. But this beer was released as part of the Lokal och Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for February of 2021. I saw this one, I liked the name, I remembered the brewery, and I just kind of thought, well, why not? So yeah, curious to see how this one turns out, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. It's always nice to review beers from the very small breweries here in Sweden. As I've told you in previous reviews, there's about 700, maybe even 750 breweries these days, and the quality of stuff in Sweden is, very, very high. There's a big culture of home brewing because of how strict the system, the alcohol laws were in the country for a long time, and to survive as a craft brewery, you've got to be putting good stuff out there. So, you can find some real gems amongst the very small Swedish breweries, and I've enjoyed the beers, as I said, from these guys before. So, yeah, nice to return to them, and I'm curious to see how this one turns out, another kvike IPA. So, yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Åre Bryggcompagni before, and we will no doubt add to that list at some point in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Åre Bryggcompagni. So Åre Bryggcompagni, as the name suggests, and as I've told you already, are based in Åre in Jämtland County, which is about 2/3 of the way up Sweden if I remember rightly, kind of out to the west of Östersund if I'm remembering rightly, but close to the Norwegian border as well. But the company was founded back in 2012 by Anders Abrahamsson and Daniel Flink. So these two had moved to Åre from Stockholm a few years prior, having been avid snowboarders, but they were also home brewers as well, and this hobby just kept growing, and eventually it ended up with them starting their own brewery in the Husa Gamla Skola, basically the Husa Old School. But they began renovating the building, and then they started securing the permits as well in the autumn of 2012, and then the first beer was launched in July of 2013, and they were working using a very small brewery of just 500 litres. But later on they moved to a larger brewery in Ängarna in Åre, and this came I think during the summer of 2017, and they can brew 2,000 litre batches at a time there, and they also retained their old brew kit for pilot brews as well from what I understand. But over the course of 2019 they brewed around 50,000 litres of beer, and they also introduced some sour beers into their range as well. I wasn't able to find any figure of how much they brewed over 2020. I'm guessing maybe it didn't increase because of the whole COVID-19 pandemic and things, but obviously that's affected Sweden slightly differently compared to other countries, so I can't be sure. But as of February 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 25 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about these guys for the moment. The other beers I've had from these guys in the past, one of them was a Saison, which I thought was a really nice beer. That was the first one I had from them. And then more recently in July 2020, I had a double IPA from them. And again, that was a really solid beer actually. I've been, as I say, impressed with the beers that I've had from them so far. So I'm quite curious to see how this one turns out. The main thing that got me with this beer was the name, and also the fact that it was a fake double IPA as well. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about this brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this before we open it up. There you can see, quite nicely presented there. I'm not sure if the shape is meant to be, I think that might, is that maybe supposed to be Jämtland County, or is it maybe Åre Commune, the shape of Åre Commune or something like this? Not 100% sure about that actually, but yeah, there you can see, there is the Åre Bryggcompagni bottle cap, and there is the symbol on the side of the bottle there. It's quite hard to tell whether the camera is actually focusing on this in this little viewfinder that I've got. It was easier on the older camera, but what can you do? This camera is better quality overall. But yeah, like I said to you at the start of the video, this one is an 8% double Kveik IPA. It's hopped with Mosaic and Chinook, and it uses a Kveik yeast, as I said. So yeah, 330ml bottle. This one, I think I paid roughly about 40 Swedish kroner for this, so about €4, £3.50, $4.50 American. So yeah, let's get this guy out then, and we'll get on with the tasting. Very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. My first beer from these guys in about 8 months, so I think this will be quite interesting. Let's go for it. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. There we are. There we are. So let me just check that that's all lined up again. And yes, looking good. Looking good. So yeah, as you can see, and as you would expect from a double IPA, this one has poured a lovely, very kind of rich, bright yellow colour. It looks a little bit like a mango juice, to be honest with you. Now remember, with these Kveik yeasts, they come from Voss in Norway. It's a very high attenuating yeast, so they're usually quite farmhousey, but they can often give you a really nice kind of fruity character. They can often give you quite a bit of tropical fruit as well. But before the head disappears, we can see that this beer poured with just under a finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. You can see on the camera there just how frothy that is. It looks absolutely lovely. But yeah, the colour of the beer overall, if we shine the light through this, I'd say it's a very kind of rich yellow, like a kind of mango juice. So yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But I mean, overall, it looks pretty nice, I have to say. I think this one goes together very, very nicely. The colour looks really good. So yeah, lovely kind of big bright yellow colour to it. So yeah, I would say this one, it's not the, I mean, Kveik IPAs, some of them can be very, very hazy, some of them not so much. You can see with this one that it is more of a kind of natural haze that you're getting out of this, rather than being a sort of oaty and wheaty based haze. So when it comes to New England IPAs, of course, it's the oat and the wheat and sometimes the yeast that determines the level of haziness that you get out of them. It's those ratios. But when it comes to the overall colour of your beer, it depends on 2 things. 1, the type of malts that you use. 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise. Thus you get a darker colour of beer, but it's dependent in the first instance on those different malts that you use in the beginning. But yeah, in terms of an IPA, nothing particularly surprising about this one. Lovely deep rich yellow, as I said. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma, just see how we got on. You can see the head is just fading away to be a nice thin foamy layer, but let's go for it and have a look at the aroma on this one then. Curious about this Kveik yeast. Oh, yeah, you can smell it straight away with this. Yeah, so straight away with this beer then, first thing that comes out is that very distinctive big yeasty character from the Kveik. So underneath it's got a bit of woodiness, it's got a bit of graininess, it's got bread crust and things like that in there. Yeah, it's really, it is really quite interesting just how all of that goes together. Yeah, the yeasty side of this beer, I have to say, is really, really interesting. It's the thing that's very distinctive for me about these Kveik yeasts is they've got this woody, just crackery sort of thing, and you get that in abundance out of this beer. This one also has a bit of kind of kick to it as well at the same time. I was wondering whether this one Yeah, this one actually also contains wheat and oats, and I was thinking there was a bit of wheaty bitiness in this beer. So yeah, you do get a bit of that kind of almost, that's not, spicy is maybe not the right word, you just get a little bit of bitey, wheaty quality out of the aroma with this beer, and it's really interesting from that perspective as well, I would say. I really like how that side of the beer goes about its business. But yeah, the aroma on this beer, I think, is pretty damn nice, I have to say. The malty, yeasty side of things goes together really well. So yeah, it smells like the kind of the kvike, obviously, that woody, crackery, farmhousey sort of thing is forming the backbone of the beer. You can smell a little bit of the bitiness of the wheat. I don't get too much of the oats in this one, to be honest. You do get a little bit of in the middle of the nose. You can smell a little bit of a kind of dried, powdery oat kind of thing going on in this beer. But yeah, I think it is more bready, doughy, kind of yeasty, to be honest with you. Yeah, I like how all of that goes together. So yeah, it's really interesting in that sense. The more that I smell of it, the more that I get oats out of it. I do get a wee bit of a kind of, I do get a wee bit of a Werther's Original butter candy type thing, which I really like. So yeah, it's interesting. It really is. The malty, yeasty side of thing in this beer goes together very, very well. Yeah, I have to say it's a very malt forward, it's a very yeast forward beer when it's a kvike double IPA. I feel like I'm stating the obvious here, but yeah, those are the most kind of powerful elements in this beer, and I think everything else kind of almost takes a little bit of a back seat to that. So that's really interesting. Yeah, quite wheat forward, but at the same time you can smell the smoothness of that kvike yeast underneath. A bit of the oaty kind of dryness comes out. It's got a little bit of a kind of, I would say it's got a little bit of a sort of sweetness to it as well. So yeah, I do like how that goes together. A little bit of Werther's Original, a little bit of oaty kind of smoothness, and then the big yeasty notes underneath. Take a bit of time and just enjoy that aroma, because I think it's quite unique in a sense. But let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. As I said, this beer has Mosaic and Chinook in it, if I remember right. And you can smell that Chinook, definitely. So yeah, for me, there is a good wee bit of earthiness coming out of this beer, and I think that's kind of promoted a little bit by the kvike yeast as well. So there is a wee touch of earthiness there, but you do get a big piney, resinous note out of the beer. You can really smell the big danky pine notes. Chinook is very distinctive in that regard for me, and you can really get that out of this beer kind of straight away. I always hesitate to call other hops piney. For me, Chinook is the piney hop just because of how big and dank it is. A lot of the other ones I would call floral, to be honest with you. So yeah, and this one's really has a big bit of just that danky piney note in there, and you've also got a little bit of kind of bite on the front of the nose too, which I think is very, very interesting. So yeah, the big kind of, you do get a bit of that kind of grassy, zesty sort of thing at the front of this beer as well. There is a nice little bit of a grassy bite to the beer, but at the same time it's not soft. It's not a soft grassiness. It does have actually quite a bitey, grassy, zesty sort of thing coming out of it. So I really like how that goes together. So yeah, take a little bit of time and just focus on the green component of the beer, because this one again is quite powerful, but I think when you've got the kvike yeast, you've got the wheat in there, you need something to balance it out. So that makes sense. Let's have a look on the fruity side of the beer. So yeah, this is quite an interesting beer from the fruity side of things. So you can get, there's quite a little bit of a more, it's got a little bit of a kind of peachy, apricot-y, I'd say it's actually a peachy sharpness you get out of this beer with a smoother apricot underneath. Those are the fruits that the kvike yeast is going to give you. And that's one of the things I always find strange about these yeasts, is just how fruity they are. But you also get that big grapefruity hit. You do get a big grapefruity hit in this one from the Chinook, but then you also get the lighter kind of tangerine oranges, and you can tell the difference between these two, because the grapefruit and the sort of tangerine oranges from the Mosaic, they come across as more oily, whereas the peachy and sort of apricot-y notes, they come across as being quite infused into the sort of bready backbone of the beer. So yeah, the different nature of the aromas, if you like, gives you quite a lot too. So yeah, this was a really interesting beer from the aroma perspective. I could sit here and smell it all day, but we're here to taste it as well. So I think we should crack on with that. But the more that this beer, when you first smell it, it does have a bit of power to it, but then as your nose kind of adjusts to it, you kind of start to get used to it a little bit more. So bear that in mind with this one. It'll knock you for six when you first open it up, but your nose will adjust to this. But yeah, take a bit of time and just ponder that over. As I always say, that's half the experience with craft beer, the aroma. But yeah, let's get stuck into this one then. So this one is called After the Gold Rush. It's an 8% double IPA with Chinook Mosaic and a Kvike yeast in it from Åre Bryggcompagni in Åre, Jämtland here in Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah, quite different from what I thought it was going to be, I'm going to say that. Now, first impression of this beer, really clean, really slick, and the Kvike yeast is coming out in the aftertaste. So yeah, I really expected this beer to just be very, very thick and you know, kind of bready and things, but the yeast, the sort of yeasty malty characters, as I say, they come out more and more in the aftertaste with this one. Although there was maybe a bit of a clue. I mean, when I was looking at the aroma, when I was looking at the appearance, I keep having brain farts in these videos these days. But yeah, when there was when we're looking at the appearance of this beer, you could see that it was, you know, a kind of more natural haze that you're getting out of this one. So you know that would kind of indicate to you, yeah, a low wheat, low kind of oat content. So yeah, you get a lot of that out of this beer, and that you know, it makes sense that the beer's slick, to be honest with you, on reflection. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. But yeah, I remember saying with the other two beers that I had from these guys, you could sort of taste the cleanliness of the water, and that's probably also kind of playing a factor. You've probably got beautiful water up there, and again, that's a kind of common theme in Nordic beer, to be honest with you. You get a lot of beers that have, you know, really nice kind of clean mouthfeels to them just because of the water. But yeah, let's try and break this down then. So straight away with this beer, you can feel a little bit of a nice kind of pale malty quality just going right across the middle of the palate there. I really like that about this one. As you go into that, if you go into that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, there's a nice kind of bread crusty type quality to this one. But then if you go into the back third of your tongue, it's got a really nice it has got a really nice kind of more bitey, wheaty presence to it. So I would say, yeah, the wheaty notes are more present in the back third of your palate. You can feel that it's just a bit thicker there, but the whole beer really feels quite slick in a sense. And you can almost feel just on top of these more malty layers, that's when you get the sort of Kvike yeasty notes there. And it's actually it actually comes across as more kind of crackery. It's like a Jacob's cream cracker. It really comes across like that, and that sits on top of both the kind of oaty, the kind of more pale malty, bready sort of thing in the middle of your palate, and it also kind of mixes in a little bit more with the wheat in the back third of your tongue. So yeah, that's a really interesting point about this one. I do like how that all goes together. Yeah, I do like this beer. I'm going to say thumbs up. This is quite an interesting one. Definitely one of the more oily Kvike IPAs that I've come across. I'm not sure how I feel about that, because I think to show off the Kvike yeast properly, I do think it has to be a bit kind of softer, if that makes sense. But this, again, it's just showing you another side to things. Quite often when you try something for the first time, you don't like it at first, but then once you start to appreciate it a bit more, it comes across a little bit better. So yeah, that's an interesting point to make up about this one. I always think I don't know how this beer does feel as if it's a bit kind of wheat, if it's a bit more kind of wheat forward, if that makes sense. And I think the wheat is maybe competing a little bit with the Kvike yeast in this one. So yeah, few points of reflection there, definitely. But yeah, on top of the kind of the sort of quite yeasty, the smooth, the quite yeast is giving you a bit of smoothness on top of the pale malt and on top of the wheat, if you like. But then on top of that, you get a little bit of the oaty smoothness. You can feel a bit of the slightly drier, kind of almost powdery type oats in the middle of the palate there, and there's a wee tiny touch of like a boozy sweetness coming out of the beer as well. So that's definitely an interesting point to make about this beer. For sure, it's definitely an interesting point there, but I think that covers the malty side of things quite well. At the very back of the palate, you will pick up a wee bit of earthiness. You can pick up a few woody notes. If you go to the front corners of your palate, then diagonally back, you will feel a few woody notes pushing their way through the malty side of the beer as well. So that's definitely another kind of interesting thing. So yeah, the kind of malty side of the malty side of this beer, I think, is quite interesting for sure. So yeah, just bear that in mind. Bear that in mind. Malty and yeasty side is always quite interesting. So yeah, in terms of the how would you say? In terms of the hoppy side of things, then, I think we can leave the malty side of the beer at that. In terms of the hoppy side of things, in the back corners of the palate, there's definitely a nice little bit of earthiness there. Mosaic's going to give you that, but Chinook, I think, can give you a wee bit of that as well. But very, very quickly, it goes into it becomes more green, and you get those big, dank, piney resins just coming up the side of your tongue there. This beer isn't overly bitter, but it does have a fair wee kind of bitter whack to it, but it's pine resin all the way up to the kind of front corners of your palate, and then it's just a wee touch more kind of spicy on the front corners of the tongue. But then round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit more kind of more grassy and things like that, but you still get quite a bit of pine resin just sitting underneath that grassy side of the beer, which is interesting too. But yeah, let's focus on the fruity and hoppy side of things then. So on that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a wee bit of the kind of, you can feel a little bit of the kind of grainy side of the, you can feel a wee bit of that sort of grainy side of the Kvike yeast coming out. A little bit dark actually as well, which is interesting. But then underneath that front third of your palate, you've definitely got a more kind of smooth Kvike kind of thing too, which I really like. But sitting on top of that, as I always say, on that front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So for me, if you go to the back of that front third of your tongue, there's a bit of the darker grapefruit in there, and then as you move further forward from it, it kind of mellows out a little bit, and very quickly it becomes a more kind of tangerine, juicy, orangey character that you get out of this beer. That's the mosaic all the way. So the Chinook is more contributing to the green side of the things, as it normally does, and it's giving you a wee bit of grapefruit, but then the rest of the beer is mosaic all the way. And what you'll notice with this beer as well is that as you progress into the aftertaste, you start to get more of the yeastiness out of the beer, and you will pick up just a little bit of an almost kind of peachy, pineapple-y sort of thing coming out of the beer as well. And that actually comes out on the front of the tongue as well, with the orangey side of the beer from the mosaic. So it's really interesting how the flavour evolves in this one. So that's something you do have to appreciate about this beer for sure. So yeah, definitely a curious one. Definitely a curious one. This beer is a lot more about the aftertaste, I think, than the other ones we've had from Åre Bryggcompagni before. But still a nice beer, still a solid beer. In terms of I think we can leave it at that for the flavour profile, to be honest with you. I think we've described it quite in depth now. But yeah, I think to round off with the mouthfeel then, as I said, this beer, for a Kvike IPA, I find this one really quite slick and oily. So I think it's probably fair to describe this beer as being kind of top end of mid-bodied. Carbonation's quite smooth. It's got a nice little oily character to it as well, which I can appreciate. The bit of the nice bit of oiliness that you get out of this beer, I can really appreciate. So yeah, how would we say? Yeah, the nice. It's really, as I say, for a Kvike IPA, it really is very, very oily. But I think, yeah, top end of mid body is probably fair for this one. In terms of hoppy bitterness and things, what would we say about this? Yeah, I don't think it's madly bitter. I think it's maybe about 40 IBUs. It feels like a little bit more bitter than a kind of New England IPA or whatever. So it does just feel that little touch more bitter in there. So a nice big kind of piney resin notes there are just giving you a wee more bitterness. 40, maybe 50 IBUs. I'll say that and I'll be wrong though. This is my weakest point with beer reviewing. So yeah, the IBUs, I think I want to say about 40 or 50. Yeah, but yeah, the malty, yeasty kind of thing, like I say, it's very, very smooth. It does have a wee bit of graininess and bitiness to it as well, and you get more kind of fruitiness. You actually get quite a bit of fruitiness out of the yeasty side of the beer before you go into the aftertaste. For me, there's not a lot of sweetness in the malt base here, which is kind of interesting, although you know, you do get a wee touch of a Werther's Original sort of thing from the boozy side of the beer, so tiny touch there, but not a lot. But the fruits for me are nice and kind of, you know, sort of slick and oily as well, and I think part of that is due to the water that's used in this beer. You know, up in Åre in the mountains, you're going to have a very good water source up there, so that's not really surprising either. And I've commented on this with the other Åre Bryggcompagni beers as well. So yeah, this one I think it's a really interesting beer. This one, it's got a nice little kick to it, which I think is good, and yeah, it's been another interesting addition to my reviews from Åre Bryggcompagni. So yeah, we'll see what they're releasing over the next while, and maybe see if we can review another different style from them at some stage. Maybe something from the dark end of the spectrum, or like a Pilsner lager or something could be quite interesting. So yeah, cool, we can leave it there. So yeah, nice to feature these guys on the channel once again, and I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Åre Bryggcompagni as well. As I say, we'll return to these guys probably sometime during the year, but yeah, some interesting beers from these guys, and I do need to get up to Åre at some stage and take a look at it. I've heard it's pretty nice. I need to actually, I can ski a little bit, but I need to put some more effort into it and get semi-decent at it. But yeah, interesting stuff, this one, definitely interesting stuff. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Åre Bryggcompagni. We will, as I say, return to these guys sometime soon. Check out my social media, check out this brewery, and I'll catch you guys in the next review. This one was After the Gold Rush, an 8% Kvik double IPA, Åre Bryggcompagni in Åre, Jämtland, Sweden. Slange, skål, cheers.